Welcome to Spider-Verse Minute, the tri-weekly podcast where we watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, 1 minute at a time. I'm Caroline Slater.
And I'm her brother Sean.
Today we're talking about minute 26. It starts with Goblin grabbing Spider-Man and ends with Miles running up to Spider-Man.
What did you name this minute?
I titled this minute, Get Him Out of There. They stole Kingpin's line, because I'm like, yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah, that's it. It works for pretty much everybody in the minute.
Right? Just get him out of there. Get everyone out of there.
Yeah, you really want Spider-Man to get out of there. You really want just Kingpin to go away and get out of there. You want Miles to get out of there.
Want Goblin to get out of there because he's just there.
Yeah.
Which I just noticed something about this minute. And before we really start into the notes, I don't remember seeing Prowler anywhere in the background, even though we saw him earlier in the minute.
Yeah, you don't really see him, he just kind of gets knocked off and then just, I don't know, disappears somewhere. Maybe he fell down a hole.
He's somewhere in that scaffolding trying to figure his way out. Or he's just being really ninja.
He's just hiding.
So where do your notes start?
Yeah, so, I actually, it didn't really have anything to say about the opening couple of seconds where Green Goblin is dragging Peter down into or towards the collider.
Beam thing?
Yeah, but the first thing I noticed was when they cut back into the control room and they show the computer screen again as it's starting to, freak out and do that. The timer in the corner, there's three things I noticed / want to comment on. Is the timer in the corner says it's been running for about 1 minute and 19 seconds, but in movie time or in real life only 1 minute and 7 have passed. And usually I don't really care about I don't get upset when it's those times don't match up, it's impossible for it to happen. But I do like it when they actually do line up in real life, and it's this timer, you can actually follow it along, and it says it's going to go off in 58 seconds, and you see 58 seconds in the movie, and it goes off. So when it works out, it's a bonus. When it doesn't, I don't really care. It's not a negative against the movie.
Yeah. Just question about that. Did you time when it was the beams were actually going, or how did you time it?
You can see in the beginning of or not in the beginning, but in the previous minute when they start it to go off, you can see it start counting up.
Okay.
And so I went from when that timer started until it shows back up here.
Got it. Okay. I was just curious.
It's about 9 seconds into this minute, and it's 17 seconds or so into the previous minute.
Okay.
Yeah, so I timed it that way.
Alright. I was just curious. Because I started when I saw the beams, because maybe it was counting for a few seconds, it had to warm up.
Yeah, no, it was when it started counting up from 0.
Well, then that's
when
fair.
I saw it start, yeah.
No defending that.
And then the other thing, too, is the warnings that appear on the screen.
So many warnings.
First of all, they appear on everyone's screen. So I could maybe understand okay, yeah, because Peter's in there, it's causing all of the readings to go haywire, but they'll just say warning with a big exclamation point. That's not a good warning.
That's all you need to know. Just be warned. There's nothing you can do about it. Apparently.
Yeah, I've had to deal with those kind of warnings at work, or errors at work where they're just this is a general error, and you don't know where it's coming from. Yeah, it's such a pain in the butt, instead of being this piece of bit's broken, go fix it, and you can just go there, fix it, and you're all good to go.
It's like when you're trying to log into a website or something, and it says either username or password is incorrect, and you're can't you just tell me which one?
Yeah.
So I can guess which one is wrong.
I don't mind as much, because it's more on forums when they're oh, something's wrong, or you're missing something, but I don't tell you what you're missing.
Yeah.
Username and password are pretty easy. It's one of the two. Not a whole lot of options you gotta go through. But Yeah, I really dislike, and they just like pop up in front of you, so like you have to close that, like click out of them till you can actually go and maybe try to adjust things. They're bad warnings, and they should feel bad about themselves. Whoever
Well, on
designed those
this
warnings.
screen, like, I had like 10 of them, so you had to like X out of every one. Like, by that time, it's just too late.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I guess we're all just gonna die. Like, you're just being annoying at this point.
Yeah. And then the third thing I noticed on the screen was what looks potentially to be a date. It says 11/15/18 in the bottom right hand corner of it, which would kind of correspond ish to around at least the time period um, of the movie. Like it's sort of that beginning of the school year, or nearish to the beginning of the school year, and earlier in the movie when we saw the when Miles got his test back and it said Decemberary.
Decemberary, and like it was some combination.
Yeah.
Kind of funny to me.
So maybe that's their 11th month, and that's what we're in now. And so if it's the 2nd to the 15th, that's another potentially 2 weeks. Like if the 11th month instead of being November is Decemberary, that could line up. But it's also supposed to be relatively quick, I think, from the first. Well, I guess if the first, from the first time he tested it. But yeah, there's some, I guess, undetermined amount of time like that passes.
It would make sense because we see fall-like colors, and then we see snow later.
November would be the perfect time for it, though, because we have those. It still looks like fall, but you have snow.
Yeah.
At some points.
Yeah.
It's also a relatively close date to when it was released. It was released December 14th.
Yeah, that was it.
And this is a month before that, just under a month before that.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then that's all I really saw on the computer screen. More of the some similar complaints to yesterday of there's code on the one side, so like why is it there?
Yeah, I didn't take note too much of the beginning of this minute, except for the absurd amount of pop-ups that came on the screen.
Yeah.
The only thing I noticed, if you don't mind me going ahead.
No, go ahead.
Is it's right when Goblin forces Spider-Man into the stream. That first look, when it's like all these red... First off, he like blurs underneath and he starts becoming very streaky, which I thought was cool. Like in the buff, you know what I mean? And then going in, you see that they don't... Like there are some dots, but it's still very almost like a river. And it very much reminded me of the iconic scene from 2001 Space Odyssey.
Oh, when he's entering the monolith and it gets all streaky. It's
like all those visions. It gave me some reminiscence of that. Not exactly, but very similar to me.
Yeah, it's a very like crossing the worlds sort of like feel to it, like kind of like when they in Narnia when they go through the wardrobe and
all
it's
the
like
coats start becoming trees.
Yeah, and like you go in and you see him entering from it's that very red and black part of bubbly bits, and then as he gets through, it's like, okay, it's very dark now, and then it kind of opens up into this other world where it's very pink and blue, and you see all of the webs connecting the different worlds.
I didn't want to talk about that whole black getting dark bit quickly, just because, first off, I love that there were little bubbles.
Yeah.
To me, it kind of gave me a bit of like a classic Disney Poison vibe, how they're like green and bubbly, but this was just black and bubbly.
Yeah.
And
it felt very much like water and oil, like the way oil pools on water and like water droplets, but like not interacting with itself, kind of like it peeling off of itself that way.
Yeah, it definitely felt like two different entities. The thing I really liked was around 17 seconds is when it starts like consuming Spider-Man's face, or Peter's face, I guess I should be saying.
Yeah.
And it's just like black around him and his mask. And I feel like that's a pretty, just that image alone is a very stark image.
Yeah.
And I feel it's a pretty common image to get on like t-shirts and things like that. Because it is such a contrast. And I just thought it was a really cool image with just having these bubbles around him. And then we like see him and then the void starts splitting, like you were saying. And all of a sudden we see, well, it's the multiverse.
Yeah, it's like kind of in between the different the world between worlds, the stuff in between the different Earths.
Yeah, and I love that it actually looks like spider webs. Like everything's kind of webbed together, which is very cool and just makes this movie's title fun to me. Like it's already a fun title, but this kind of gives it's like, oh, so the multiverse was created by a giant spider.
Yeah,
that's why it looks like a web.
It's kind of like that in the crossover event, like that this is sort of based off of. It deals with how like all of the each spider person is called like a totem. It's a spider totem.
Yeah.
And I guess there's different animal totems as well.
Yeah.
But this one, like all of the spider totems are connected together through the Great Web, which connects like some totems have stronger connections to the web and each other than the others, and so they really use that spider web metaphor to connect them all to each other. And I think all of those like lines are connecting to different totems. So like in this specific universe, there'd probably be like or two different ones going to the to this Earth right now. And like if you look at the ones going into the 616, there'd be like 5 or 6 or a bajillion. No, probably like
all of them.
5, I think. And like nowadays it'd be like 6, I think. But yeah, so it's just the different ways to follow like where the different spider people are.
And it does make for a very cool just image as well. Like I could see someone like screen capping that and using it as like a wallpaper. I almost want a poster of it. Like it looks awesome.
Yeah, well, later on, when the reactor explodes, I had a note being like, it seemed like they really wanted to get a couple good wallpapers, and so like you have these like, there's like 4 sort of like the mini clips of the different people like getting blown back, and they all like explode really quickly, slow down a lot, like it's like, okay, take the picture now, and then like they go into the next one. Like there's a really good one with like Kingpin getting blown backwards, and a really good one with Spider-Man getting blown backwards, and there was like 3 or 4 in a row. You're like, oh yeah, I guess they just wanted some cool posters or wallpapers for this.
I mean, credit where credit's due. They have some really cool shots.
Yeah.
And they know it. Since you brought up just before the explosion, there's the glitching that Peter starts experiencing. Do you want to talk about this a bit?
Yeah, and we get they have the different we see who the different like characters that'll be introduced in the bit. So we see Peter B. Parker sitting on his bed on the floor, kind of looking confused. It looks like Gwen's falling, and then Penny looking around, and then we see Peter and Gwen again, and then it shows Spider-Man Noir holding up the match to his face for like a couple frames. And the only one they didn't show, at least that I saw, and I scrolled through it, was Spider-Ham. Was the only one that didn't appear in there, and I wonder if they wanted to just introduce him as more of a gag, and this was enough to be like, oh yeah, here are the normal looking ones.
Well, and I love Spider-Ham, don't get me wrong, and he does have his more serious moments in this movie, but he really much is the comic relief of this whole group.
Yeah.
And the ones they flashed tend to be, well, Spider Noir
Spider-Man,
has some very comical moments, but it like
yeah, his bits are usually played off a bit more comically.
yeah, but I think the reason his bits are more comical is because he is like very serious character. So I
Yeah,
think that's why he's still where, you know, Spider Ham is a cartoon pig.
yeah,
One of the most comical things you can be.
yeah. Spider Ham is more cartoony funny, whereas Spider-Man Noir is like deadpan funny.
Yeah. So different
Um,
types of comedy, which is why I think when showing this, they showed a bit more of the more serious characters.
yeah,
And so it makes sense. And we get two of the main focus ones, which are Spider Gwen
yep,
and Peter B. Parker.
yeah.
So I'm excited to talk about Peter B. Parker when we finally get to him.
Yeah, and when I looked at it, at least with Peter B. Parker's, it's from the same angle that we see the portal like open on the top of his bedroom,
Yeah.
and so like I thought it might be like, oh, this is the moment right before they get sucked through,
Mm-hmm.
but then like Spider Gwen looks like she's just like falling, and it doesn't really look like it's when she's on the side of the building about to get pulled through.
Yeah.
So it could just be like, oh, they did it for that one, and then just kind of like this could be the like it's almost in sequence, like in sequence of like, okay, here's the first second of the event, like they all get pulled through at the same time, so here's the first second of like this is what they would look like confused with Peter B, and then like they got sucked through, so this is Gwen falling through it, and then Penny and Spider Noir both looking confused is just them falling through as well, I guess. But I imagine Noir's candle, or not candle, match would have went out. Yeah. So I don't know what's up with him.
Spider Noir, like, it's, who knows?
Yeah, but it is a really cool, and like the in the like director's commentary, they were saying how like this using this as the setup allowed them to not have to do like a sort of voiceover explaining why they were all getting sucked here. It's just like, oh, okay, these are the ones, like they're kind of more attuned to this Spider Person's like personality, or not personality, but like they're more in sync with him, so they're the ones that'll get drawn towards him, and they can just show that this way instead of like having to have it during the explanation, like why it was these other four characters that got sucked through.
Yeah, it's a great example,
Or five.
I feel, of show don't tell
Yeah.
in this moment. And the one thing I think kind of helps really connect it later is that it almost feels like you can see why they were pulled here later in the movie when Miles is struggling with certain things and they all come to comfort him, and he's like, hey, we get it. Like, we're probably the only people who will get it. And it feels like they're all drawn here because they're all at different points, but they all still connect back, and they all still have very good memory of like when they were at the same point Miles was.
Yeah, I think that would work with any Spider Person. That like when they were saying like we might be the only people, they really just meant like Spider people, and not necessarily just like, you know, these five specific characters are the ones that would only get it.
Yeah, but what I think the point I'm trying to make is that like they're all at different times. Like you have Spider Gwen, who's around the same age as him. You have Peter B. Parker, who's much older than him. You have Spider Noir and Spider Ham, who like kind of focuses more Miles' deadpan comedy, which he does have, and more of Miles is more cartoony comedic stuff like he has with his uncle. And then you have Penny with his like the connections with like the father and the uncle and stuff. And it's just, if you look, to me anyway, I could be looking too deep into this, but like each one seems to have has something to contribute to Miles. Yeah. Besides that they're spider people and they get it. It feels a little more specific. I mean, you know what
literally, I mean? It makes sense why they got pulled through, but it's like Peter's the one that got stuck in the thing, so they shouldn't be attuning to Miles's needs because he's not the one stuck in the keep wanting to call it the Speed Force. They're they're not Flash characters.
They're not.
They're not speedsters. No, the when they keep getting stuck, like when Peter gets stuck in the into the the web, it's attuning to him, and as the characters are flashing in front of us, there's some like voiceovers that we kind of hear. They're very, very distorted though.
Yeah, I like kind of heard it, but I always thought I was kind of imagining it, so I wasn't entirely sure.
Yeah, and like it's not in the script, so I wasn't able to try to figure that out. But it sounds like Penny saying we lost her, but again, like it's very like echoey, and so yeah, I heard Penny saying we lost her, and it sounded like Gwen saying either we are one or really Ron. I don't know who Ron would be, but maybe it's a friend of hers and she's just really upset as she's getting sucked in.
Maybe she's watching Kim Possible.
Maybe.
You know?
Yeah, I Gwen's was, just as hard too because it was very echoey and like dragged out, so it was hard to hear that.
At first I was saying, look, maybe they just took lines from earlier in the movie, but I don't remember a time when Penny says we lost her at all in this movie.
Yeah.
So they must have had the voice actors like ad-lib something.
Yeah, and then it explodes. It goes boom.
This is a very blinding explosion and a very colorful explosion at the same time.
Yeah, it gets very from the control room, it's very blue.
It's very blue.
And that was the moment we're like, oh yeah, they're, like I said earlier, they're trying to make wallpapers out of this. It's like it shoots out and it's like, okay, here's for a couple of seconds. You can quickly grab this if you want.
I mean, I'm fine with it. They're like, they'd make cool wallpapers.
Yeah.
The one thing I do still connect to the explosion, but kind of moving on a little bit, that I do love showing is this just wave of a blackout that runs through the city.
Yeah. It's a really cool like surge. Like it's caused by an electrical surge. It drained a bunch of power, caused a bunch of the stuff to turn out and then turn back on. Those are the kind of like power outages that I hate the most. I think is when it like shuts off and comes back on within like a couple of seconds, just because like, well, everything's rebooting now. Like,
yeah, it's like it's shut down just enough that everything is rebooted, and you're like, really?
Yeah, I'm okay with. If it's out for a couple hours, that makes me feel not as bad, but when it's like, oh, off on, come on.
I remember at the time we were recording this, it wasn't too long ago. I guess it was a while ago, but a couple months ago at the time of recording this, Manhattan just had a blackout, and everyone was like making jokes about it, and part of me was like, well, dang. Someone activated the reactor and really busted out the same.
But yeah, and the cool thing with the explosion is you can actually see the spider people being brought into this universe exploding out from the they follow the shockwave. You can see little dots that shoot them out.
See, I didn't catch that, and you told me about it beforehand, and I totally forgot to look for it.
Yeah, there's 5 dots. Gray would be Noir, blue would probably be like Gwen, yellow would be Spider-Ham, red would be Spider-Man, and then white would be Penny, maybe.
What was the other color? White?
Yeah.
Don't you think white would maybe be Gwen? Because her suit's white.
Blue with Gwen, because she's got the blue in the suit.
But her suit's mostly white.
Yeah, I always associate that blue more with her. The like.
Oh, is
this
it
is a darker blue, but like. Okay. I just associate blue more with her because she's got like her, her shoes are blue. That like electric blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, electric blue, baby blue.
Yeah.
And just the her like suit highlights are more defining as that blue. But yeah, we see them shoot out, which is really cool. And yeah, it was something I didn't pick up on the first viewing either.
I still haven't picked it up, so I'm gonna have to keep an eye out for that next time I watch the movie.
Yeah.
Which might be soon, because every time we do this new episode, I'm always like, oh, I will watch the movie again. Every time.
Yeah, by the end I'll have watched the movie at least 4 times just through watching the minutes on with different audio tracks and whatnot.
Yeah, I don't go that extreme. That's all you.
Yeah, I watched the regular minute. I watched the alternate scenes minute. I watched the director's commentary and the animator's commentary.
Everything. I watched the normal minute.
And then after the explosion, we come back and we see that the whole room is destroyed. It's very dark.
I really want to talk about this atmosphere change because it's stark one. Like, I know we talked about in previous minutes how we had, like, the fast pace to the slow pace from Miles, like, running down the street to walking in the subway. But this one, I think, is arguably the most extreme atmosphere and even tonal change in the movie. Because it goes from this, like, action-packed Spider-Man comic book type thing to not horror movie, but almost disaster movie like the aftermath of an apocalypse movie almost.
It goes from very bright to very dark, and like you can see everything going on to you can't really see much in front of you.
And I think what helps with this stark contrast, and this is really the first time it like hit me, I think, but I never fully realized is, so the camera starts, this is just a shot of great camera work to me, and you see the reactor and you see the explosion and it's like foggy / dusty from the debris and it's dark, and it pans down and it lands on Goblin's hand underneath rubble.
Yeah. And then you see Miles like walk into his hand, right in the center of the frame, like,
and just have this
it's
pause.
just really cool. Yeah, it's just really cool. Like, oh, he's checking on him.
Yeah.
And then and then that zooms, cuts, and we see Miles up close.
Yeah, and they switched his perspective, which is another great use of like seeing through Miles' eyes. Yeah. I love how they keep lingering on this hand and like it's just not moving at all. It's completely still. And then it slowly moves over and you see Spider-Man. You see Peter.
Yeah, and Peter has the one working light still shining on him. He's got that very angelic, like, oh look, this is very important over here. Take a look at this.
It's almost like God is like, here he is. This is what you're looking for right here. This is where he is. But it's in all seriousness, it's a very. I remember first time I saw it, I think I let out a small gasp because I was not expecting it. I was like,
yeah, it's a very like sudden, shocking turn of events. The other thing too is just like the music really does a good job with adding to the atmosphere as well. It's this very just ominous. It's this very ominous sounding, music that also does a good job. As Miles runs up to Peter, and like the cool thing about this too that I also like is like the camera is stuck behind debris, so it's not just, we don't just see Peter running up to Miles, but it's like we're almost like these.
Do you mean Miles running up to Peter?
Yeah, we're these non-active observers, or like we're sort of just like spying on them almost.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're watching this, kind of from afar until we cut up really close to him.
I wrote that down too, or I thought that was a very cool image of just seeing Miles through these shadows. It was very cool camera work, and I think even added to like just to help. Like obviously we see it's in the rubble, but I don't know, something about having those shadows, seeing it there, it almost shows just how much rubble it is.
Yeah, it seems like almost too much rubble at times.
It was a giant explosion that caused a blackout through the city, John.
Yeah, but like it seems like there's too much. Like you had the 2 reactors on the side, and it seems like a little bit like, okay, we're really not. Are we that close to one of them? Maybe to have like caused all this rubble, and it seems really crowded for the amount of stuff that was in the room.
Yeah, well, actually, you bring up that it was the reactors, but I don't know if it was the reactors itself that exploded, because when you notice in the first one, like, the side of the reactor itself, it's pretty much in relative intact.
It at least looks intact. It's too far away to see like how much damage there actually is. Like,
but it
could be a
almost
big
seems
hole
like
in the
maybe
top.
the explosion didn't. It's just a theory for me, but it almost seems like the explosion didn't come from the reactors themselves.
Oh, I don't think it did. But like you said, it caused a blackout for the whole city. Like,
It
was
caused a
big
blackout.
explosion.
Yeah, it was huge, and I almost think maybe what it was like some sort of like atom explosion, maybe.
I mean, it was the universes like interacting with each other.
So who knows what kind of explosion
violently.
that would cause and the rubble behind it.
Yeah. That's all I have for this minute.
Yeah, that's all I have for this minute as well.
Sounds good. Thank you for joining us. Join us on Friday as we find out what Peter and Miles' interaction is like.
See you next time.
Bye.